I got the orange one. Oh, hey there. If you don't mind, I'd like to keep watching the green screen stars for a while. They're so beautiful tonight. In the years since its launch, the Switch has given me many special memories. Breath of the Wild instilled within me a sense of wonder I hadn't felt in years. Super Mario Odyssey brought back the Mario I'd been yearning for half my life. Luigi's Mansion 3 was just, really super awesome. But this moment that we're in right now, and the one we're about to experience, this is something particularly special. It's an awful feeling, being madly in love with a series that feels like it's gone defunct, having little to no confidence that you'll see a new entry anytime soon, if ever. You can't help but look longingly at the series that get new entries regularly and ruminate on how much you would give for even just one single new game. And the sad thing is, it's very likely that just about every Nintendo fan has at least one series like that. Nintendo's got so many IPs, and they're so choosy about what they want to work on that we've all got those series. The ones with games that we pick up from time to time, smile at, then put back on the shelf with a resigned sigh. Every Nintendo Direct that comes and goes, we hope for that surprise announcement we've been waiting for, but we never truly expect it. Metroid has been one of those series for me, and many others as well. It's never sold too good, and a number of costly blunders lowered the chances that Nintendo would be bumping it up the priorities list any time soon. Of course, that did change somewhat in 2017. Metroid Prime 4 and Samus Returns were announced out of the blue, which meant that Nintendo was willing to give the series another go. Even then though, the future of the 2D series was in question. Prime is awesome, obviously, but what about the mainline games? Samus Returns was a remake of an old game, and it didn't sound like it was much of a sales success. So was that all the 2D Metroid we were gonna get for another decade? Was that all Nintendo was interested in doing? Or was it a viability test that just failed? Well, at E3 this year, we got our answer in the form of a very special game. Not only a 2D Metroid game on Switch, and not only the first brand new mainline Metroid game in close to 2 decades, but Metroid Dread. The long-rumored entry we all assumed was never meant to be. The game looks incredible, it's launching next to new hardware, and Nintendo is advertising the heck out of it. It's an absolute dream come true. A troubled series that I love to pieces is getting an honest chance at becoming more relevant than it's ever been. It's not just back. If we're incredibly lucky and the game sells well, this could even mean more frequent releases going forward. And heck, maybe even expansion into a legitimate franchise if we're dreaming. At the time of this recording, the release of Metroid Dread is very close. These are the final hours of a world where Metroid Fusion is the newest mainline Metroid game. Metroid is back. It's really and truly back. And much as I did before the Switch was revealed, I'd like to capture this moment so that I can always look back to the days before Dread. The days before the series made its grand return. In these final moments, I can't help but reflect on how we got here. How my love for the series has blossomed over the years into what it is today. So if you would, please join me. Join me as I relive my Metroid journey. We can watch the stars as we go. Beautiful. Considering how vocal I am about my love of Metroid, you might be surprised to learn that I never had Super Metroid on my Super NES, or either of the GBA titles. It wasn't actually that long ago that I played a 2D Metroid for the first time. No, this love story began back on the GameCube. As you can see here on my actual Christmas wish list from 2002 when I was only 15 years of age, Metroid Prime was at the top. I most likely read about the game in Nintendo Power, and I couldn't tell you what a Metroid was, but I knew I had to have it. I mean, those were the GameCube glory days, when Nintendo was pumping out incredible games faster than we could play them. This was the next big, cool thing, and I was on board. Sure, maybe I was a little nervous about playing a game in a series I knew nothing about. It's nice to feel familiar with a game world going in, but I didn't let that stop me. I ended up finding Metroid Prime under the tree, and I was sick on Christmas, so I just stayed up in my room and did nothing but play that game for days. And I was in love. The graphics were simply incredible, for one. To this day, the game looks amazing. I have absolutely no idea why it looks as good as it does. I remember watching Tech TV, probably X-Play or something, and they were deciding what console game had the best graphics ever. The powerhouse Xbox was way stronger than the GameCube, and it was running Halo, and everyone was all impressed with it. And yet they were like, oh, but Metroid Prime looks the best, for sure. And I was like, yeah, it does. But anyway, beyond just looking great, here was this massive adventure across this interconnected world. Every environment was so interesting, every corner so exciting to turn. The exploration and all the backtracking with new abilities to find power-ups made for an incredibly satisfying sense of progression that up until that point I had only really experienced in Zelda games. Though I must say, I did get lost. A lot. I spent hours and hours wandering around trying to decipher the map, taking wrong turns and traveling across the world to hit dead ends and just generally not being very good at navigating. But that didn't matter at all because I was in it. Nowadays, such a thing might frustrate me, but back then I was perfectly happy wandering. As long as I had that controller in my hands, all was well. And these are things that I wouldn't have been able to put into words back then, but the atmosphere really had an effect on me. This might sound funny, but atmosphere wasn't nearly as much of a thing back then. Thick, moody vibes were only just becoming more popular. And Talon 4, man. All the world's inhabitants were gone, leaving messages for me to find. Everything was run down and overgrown or commandeered by space pirates. The scan visor cranked the immersion factor up to 11. That feeling of isolation was intense. There's this big stretch in the Phazon mines with loads of enemies and no save rooms, and at one point I had to inch my way through, 1 or 2 shots from dying, huddling in corners and feeling so hopeless and alone. It was stressful, but that feeling has stuck with me. It was so strong. In those tense moments, I was Samus. I was alone on an alien planet, badly hurt, just trying to survive. It was an important experience for me, even if I didn't realize it. A really important first in my gaming life. Despite my love of Metroid Prime, I didn't immediately get its sequel. You know how it is, you go through busy times where you don't follow games as much. I was rapidly approaching adulthood, hanging out with friends, being a silly teen, but I finally picked up Echoes a few years later. I did enjoy it, but not on a level quite as deep, I don't think. And man, it was hard. If I got lost a lot in the first game, now the light-dark mechanic made it 3 times worse. And having to hide in light bubbles while on Dark Aether to avoid constantly taking damage added a big element of stress to the experience. It was kind of like my Phazon Mine story, but stretched out into half a game. It was a little overwhelming. Then after that, I remember watching the teaser trailer for Prime 3, though I also didn't play that one right away, which is so weird to imagine now. I will be playing Prime 4 the second it becomes available. You can be sure of that. But again, it's how life goes sometimes. And in fact, by then, I was a very young adult and completely swept up in a whirlwind of college and new friends and driving and working and all that grown-up stuff. When I finally did get my hands on Prime 3 though, I was blown away. I was so into motion controls for the immersion factor back then, so flicking my controller to rip away enemy shields and turn dials and stuff felt incredible. Pointer aiming was 10 times as fun as stick controls were as far as I was concerned. Then Prime 1 and 2 already looked amazing, but 3 took it even further, delivering an experience that didn't look like it belonged on the Wii. And of course, the game had the biggest scope, the most characters and cutscenes. You could actually do stuff inside the gunship. It was just amazing. It felt like one of those perfect big budget sequels, the kind that makes you feel spoiled. I had the original version of the game for a while, but didn't beat it until I got the Trilogy collection, which gave pointer controls to the first 2 games as well. And I gotta tell ya, I was on cloud 9 about that. Playing through the whole trilogy in one go for the first time was an incredibly important step in this this Metroid journey. I loved the experience so much. I was one big step closer to being a full Metroid fan. These games were burrowing themselves into my heart. By this time, I still hadn't played any of the 2D games. I mean, I picked up the first game when it was in the first Animal Crossing or something and put it down after about 20 seconds, but that doesn't really count. Funny thing is, I didn't know much about the games either. Everything I knew about Metroid, I learned from the Prime trilogy, so naturally I was missing a lot of pieces to the puzzle. In fact, to this day, I have issues with the story that might, at least in part, stem from my initial lack of info. After playing Prime 1, I noticed that Chozo and Space Pirates have similar body shapes, and I knew that Samus was raised by the Chozo, so I imagined that she was in some galaxy that doesn't even have humans in it. I still think that's a cool idea, but of course Prime 2 taught me about the Federation and, other humans. But even then, I thought, okay, but Samus is a total loner, right? Like, she never has to answer to anyone. And then I learned about how she actually joined the Federation at one point, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I really hate about that that I don't have time to go into, which does lead me to Other M. The trailer for Other M looked so cool. The action and all the finishing moves and everything just looked like the raddest thing I'd ever seen in my life, especially after spending so much time behind Samus's visor. But then the reviews were middling, and again, I was really busy with life during the Wii era, and of course, later I learned about the stuff in Other M, so to this day, I still haven't played it. I do want to, but even though I didn't play it though, I honestly think connecting with that trailer was a big moment for me. It really showed how much I was willing to invest in the series, and how cool I thought it had the potential to be. I mean, I was out of my mind with excitement when I first saw it. I was slowly becoming a Metroid fan and didn't even know it. Then it finally happened. To celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Famicom, Nintendo sold a bunch of games on the Wii U Virtual Console for 30 cents each, and Super Metroid was one of them. Yep, that's right. I didn't play a 2D Metroid until I could get one for 30 cents. But let me tell you, I fell in love with Super Metroid right away. I'd watched some speedruns, so I knew what to expect, and I didn't get to feel the full force of the important story developments, which is, pretty unfortunate. But that didn't stop it from blowing me away. I mean, what can I even say about Super Metroid? Even if you haven't played it, I'm sure you know it all by now. It's massive, the atmosphere is impossibly thick, the progression system feels great, it's just a gorgeous, terrifying, incredibly fun game. It's got some control issues, and it's very easy to get lost in such a big world, but it still feels like a masterpiece to me. And I say that as someone with zero nostalgia for it. And after playing Super, I think it's safe to say that that's when it happened. I no longer felt like I had only touched one half of this Metroid world. I was finally filling in the blanks, experiencing the whole spectrum. Super Metroid was when I finally became a full-blown Metroid fan. Well, after that door had been opened, I was eager to check out the other 2D Metroid games. So eager, in fact, that I took my sweet, sweet time getting around to them. Also, life, that was a thing as well, as always. Time does fly, doesn't it? And there are always so many games on the backlog. So a while after playing Super, I played Fusion. It ties into a lot of the stuff I don't like about the canon, and its linearity brings it down massively compared to the other games. But I still enjoyed the experience. The visuals and atmosphere are terrific, and the more modern controls are a huge plus. It was around this time that Nintendo announced Federation Force. And now that I was a complete Metroid fan, this hurt. I was really excited about the idea of a brand new Metroid, so this weird spin-off felt very tone-deaf. Honestly, I actually do like the idea of a spin-off that tells a side story within the universe, but doing that instead of a new game and giving it a weird chibi style and making it a game that's intended to be played co-op? I mean, they sabotaged the poor thing. Seriously, I actually want to play Federation Force, but playing it with friends is basically impossible, and I don't know if I feel like trying it solo with bots. I've heard that's not great. If a series fan wants to play your game, but the barrier to entry is too high for them to bother, yeah, you've really messed something up, I'm sorry. At the very least, though, the pain of Federation Force was more proof of how much I had grown to care about the series. I had graduated to that higher echelon of Nintendo fandom, where I spent more time fretting about the series I loved than actually playing and enjoying it. Dwelling on the failures, wondering if Nintendo would ever really bring it back, worrying about poor sales of past titles. That's when you know you're a real fan, right? Then, of course, in 2017, my Metroid sense started tingling. I felt something coming, and boy, was I right. Nintendo announced Metroid Prime 4, and I was very, very pleased, as you might remember. The series that started it all for me was coming back. I mean, it was unreal. That's still in the works at the time of this recording, but that year we also got Samus Returns. This was great because Metroid 2 was another game I was just not even willing to touch. I knew I wouldn't have the patience for a game like that without a map or anything. So yeah, a modern remake, I'd been hoping that would happen for years, and Samus Returns floored me. Even more zippy, fluid controls than Fusion, really excellent 3D visuals, great abilities, satisfying exploration, just about the whole package. It's held back a little by the linearity of the game it was modeled after, but it does so much within those limitations that it still manages to feel decently open. If Super Metroid made me a full-on Metroid fan, Samus Returns is the game that made me a big Metroid fan. It was the game that made me go, okay, I love this. I love this intensely. I need a lot more of this. It also leveled up that intense sadness and longing I was talking about. Sure, it was possible that Nintendo would take the groundwork of Samus Returns and do more with it, but judging by the game's sales, it didn't seem likely. A simple remake of Super or Fusion or something sounded like the best we were probably gonna get. By this point, I'd done some research and learned a lot more about a project called Metroid Dread, a game that was referenced in Prime 3 and had once been in development, but had eventually been scrapped. This, of course, led to many long nights dreaming of what the game could have been like, where the series might have been if Nintendo gave it the love it deserved. This was when I actually grew fairly angry that Nintendo wasn't willing to work with the series that helped spawn an entire genre, a genre that was and still is thriving in the indie space. Like, seriously, kind of angry. It seemed absurd. I coped by coming up with my own ideas for Metroid games I wish they'd make. I even have a super cool idea I came up with for Dread, just based on the name and the log entry in Prime 3. And it's actually fairly similar to what we ended up getting, funny enough. Throughout all these years, I continued to play through the Metroid Prime trilogy from time to time. 1 is still an absolute masterpiece in my eyes, one of my favorite games of all time. 2 is a game that I appreciate more and more every single time I play it. And 3 is a game I think I appreciate less. Its different areas are just so linear and strung out, leading to loads of pointless backtracking. I still like it, but the wow factor has worn off considerably. Super is always gonna be terrific, I'm sure. Fusion, I've still only played the once. I do want to run through it again, though. Samus Returns, I could play any number of times, and I want to play AM2R one of these days. And surprisingly, I only just played Zero Mission for the first time really recently. It's so weird that I waited so long, but like I said earlier, I was kinda savoring it. And yeah, it's incredibly good. It might not be as big and open as Super, and the GBA was very limited in terms of control inputs, but beyond those small limitations, it's everything you could want from a Metroid game. I look forward to playing it many, many more times. And that leads us back to now. Gosh, now that I really look back on it all, I'm realizing that while many times my love of Metroid grew thanks to specific games and events, a lot of it just sort of happened naturally over time. Even just these last few years, as I've dreamed of new games and replayed the old ones, I've grown more attached. For example, remember when Ridley was announced for Smash? I didn't even react that strongly. It was great fun, but at the time, I remember being happy for the fans that had been asking for him in Smash more than anything. Like, I had only recently learned that they'd been asking for years, and I was mostly just happy they got what they wanted. That was only a few years ago, and right now, I am having a hard time understanding that reaction. In that short time, I've grown to love Ridley so much more that if he were announced today, I think I would have a heart attack. It's Ridley in Smash! That's literally the coolest thing ever. Today, I love Metroid so much that Metroid Dread actually existing legitimately feels like a dream. And even more dreamlike is how much Nintendo is supporting the game and how hyped everyone is for it. It's happening. It's really happening, and it's hard to fathom. And that's really why I wanted to capture these final moments before the game releases. This is a very scary but very exciting time in Metroid's history. We're all kinda holding our breaths, hoping that the game does well enough to grow the audience and shoot the series higher on Nintendo's priority list. The idea of it not doing well and Nintendo putting the series on ice for another decade or two is terrifying, but I think most of us are feeling really hopeful. The Switch sells games. The game looks incredible. There's no doubt that it will be the best-selling Metroid game ever, and probably by a pretty decent margin. And that's a pretty darn good position to be in. Maybe right now you're watching this well after the fact. You already know how this story ends, or at least how the next 1 or 2 chapters go. But me, right now as I record this, I'm standing on the precipice. I'm looking up to the stars and dreaming of what may come. It's silly because we're just talking about a game series here, but man, that's just how much Metroid means to me. I couldn't tell you exactly why it feels so special, but something about it just connects with me. The imaginative sci-fi settings, the beautiful and intriguing alien worlds and creatures, the fun gameplay paired with intensely satisfying progression and exploration systems, the ongoing theme of isolation, Samus herself. Metroid is beautiful, it's elegant, and I adore it. Thank you for joining me as I looked back on my Metroid journey. Whether you're here with me in these final moments, or you've been speedrunning Metroid 6 for 5 years now, always remember this moment. I know I will. It's the moment before one of those truly rare and special events. Nintendo reviving a beloved series and making the dreams of a lucky few come true. This is the moment before Metroid truly returns to us. Oh my gosh! Oh, it's Samus! Yeah, hey, Samus, hey! Whoa, wait, whoa, watch out, Samus, watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out! Ah!